Hello, I'm Ruth Karpes, and I'm here to tell you the story of Morris, the downside of bat. Now, you know most bats hang upside down but their toes. All bats except one bat, and that one is Morris, the downside of bat. Wasn't always that way, though. When Morris was a little bat, a big owl flew into the barn where he was hanging by his toes the way bats do. Morris got so scared that he turned himself downside up, hoping to fool the owl into thinking he was not a bat, and the owl flew out. After hanging that way for a little while, Morris began to enjoy himself. He could also hear a little clearer, see a little further, and catch the little flying snacks, trying to avoid his upside-down relatives. However, Morris's hanging style was not approved of by the other bats. "What difference does it make which way I sleep?" Morris asked Fred, his best friend. "Tradition," answered Fred. "Bats hang upside down." What do you do? Morris shrugged. Life isn't perfect, he thought, and he flew off to do something he liked, which was watching television shows. Morris discovered television while hanging downside up outside windows. He liked music programs best. Morris's favorite performers were the singers. Sometimes he watched them all night long. When Morris started imitating some of the performers, he discovered he could sing too. He made himself a little guitar to strum while he sang, and he also made a wig, like some of their funny hairstyles. Morris liked wearing wigs and hats. In fact, he liked wearing all kinds of costumes. He did have one costume, though, that created a bit of trouble. He had found an owl mask from Halloween and flew around the barn screeching, "Hoot, hoot, hoot." That did not go over well with the rest of the bats, but that was sort of fun too. Every year, Morris's relatives held a big meeting. They discussed bat things, like winter housing, enemy owl protection, scary pranks for Halloween. This year, the sign added aerobatics and other entertainment. Prize for best. Sign up. Morris was ecstatic. Maybe this was his big chance to perform as Morris the magnificent singer. But when he went to enter the contest, 3 bullies blocked his way. "You're not a real bat," they taunted. "How can you act?" And every time he went to the box, the bullies were there, preventing him. What to do? Morris was worried. He wanted more than anything to perform in front of a real audience. Well, one stormy night, while the bullies sat guarding the talent box, a big owl flew straight towards them. They screamed and scattered, and then Morris dropped his entry into the box. Finally, the big night arrived. Morris was dressed and ready. Fred went early to get good seats. But when Morris arrived, the bullies were tending the door. "Hey, here's Fancy Pants," one of the bullies taunted. "He thinks he can act. You're not a real bat," the others cried, and they prevented Morris from entering. It was 3 against 1. Morris left. Inside the barn, the meeting began. First came the business, then the entertainment. Flying tricks and scary faces. Meanwhile, Fred panicked. Where was Morris? He looked over his shoulder. He looked around the room. He looked down at the stage. And then he looked up. And so did everyone else. At the open window, where a strange creature hung on the narrow ledge. A shiny gold guitar dangled from its neck. Suddenly, it let go, swooped down, and Morris, in a fancy costume, began to perform. "You ain't nothing but a lollipop." The bats stared. They scratched their heads. Then they sat up, leaned forward, and finally, with such wing flapping, they shouted and cheered that the head bat had to yell, "Quiet!" And then he crowned Morris the winner. From then on, Morris, the magnificent singer, performed around the countryside and gave downside-up hanging lessons to all the admiring bats, including the bullies. And Morris says to each of you, thank you. I've enjoyed that you listened to my story.